Hey, good afternoon and welcome to our first meeting of April. We have a few people in the council this evening and hopefully a few more watching us on our Electric City Television or maybe even YouTube. The invocation tonight will be given by the Mayor Pro Tem Beatrice Thompson, and respect to the flag will be led by Councilman Tony Stewart. Please rise.
And we pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come once again to these chambers to do the business of the city. We thank you for your holy presence being with us. As we prepare to conduct the business of our city, help us to be guided by your direction in our decision making, that we may have a vision to see what is possible, the faith that will prove to pave our way, and of course, a future that is peaceful. We pause here for a minute to welcome our newest council member, Councilman Martinez, along with our own council member, Mr. Garvin. Thank you both for joining us tonight and helping us to make programs to do the work of this city. Thank you so much for being here. And as we encounter now a world of confusion brought on by the ravages of disunity, hatred, storms, wars, and rumors of wars, we implore your healing power so that we can live together in peace and comfort. And of course, we ask, dear God, your blessings on our entire community. We ask your blessings upon our servicemen and women who work to keep our nation safe, our law enforcement officers who work to keep our community protected, our city employees who work so hard to keep our community strong and healthy. And finally, oh God, we give thanks to you for all your many blessings. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple items before we get into the body of our meeting, and the first thing that we'll do, as Dr. Thompson alluded to, is the swearing in of our newest councilman, Ms. McEwen.
Yes, sir. We have a seat 2 was vacant. It was vacant by Mr. Donald Chapman. I believe he's in attendance tonight, and we're glad to have him in attendance. And the seat was vacant, which required an election and to fill the unexpired term. And so with that, elections were held, and we'll proceed with swearing in the new councilman.
Thank you.
Ready?
Lewis, if you would put your hand on this Bible and repeat after me, and we will begin with the constitutional oath. I, Louis Martinez II, do solemnly swear
I, Louis Martinez II, do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of the State of South Carolina,
according to the Constitution of the State of South Carolina,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I've been elected,
that I will,
to
to the best of my ability,
the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and defend the Constitution of this state
and defend the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And now, statutory oath. As councilman of the city of Anderson,
As councilman of the city of Anderson,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect,
and carry into effect,
according to the law,
according to the law,
the purpose for which I have been elected.
the purpose for which I've been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
We have a couple proclamations surrounding fair housing and CDBG. And I would ask our friend Michael Cunningham to come up and stand beside me for a second. If you be patient, I'm going to read a couple of proclamations. In the first proclamation, reads, whereas the month of April is recognized throughout the United States of America as Fair Housing Month, and whereas Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, set forth a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, or disability. And whereas housing is a critical component of family and community health and stability, and whereas both federal and state offices of the Department of Housing and Urban Development continue their efforts to promote and educate as many citizens as possible about everybody's right to equal opportunities in housing, ensuring that all Americans have the opportunity to achieve the American dream of homeownership. And whereas the City of Anderson continues to affirmly further fair housing for its citizens, now, therefore, I, Terrence B. Roberts, Mayor of the City of Anderson, along with my fellow colleagues, do hereby proclaim April of 2022 to be Fair Housing Month in the City of Anderson for the significance of fair housing to our way of life, and encourage all citizens to observe and support both the letter and spirit of the Fair Housing Law as expressed of the individual rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of South Carolina. And the next proclamation reads, whereas the week of April 11th through April 15th, 2022 has been designated as the National Community Development Week by the National Community Development Association to celebrate Community Development Block Grant, CDBG programs, and Home Investment Partnerships, HOME programs. And whereas the CDBG program provides annual funding and flexibility to local communities to provide decent and safe and affordable housing, a suitable living environment, and economic opportunities to low and moderate income people. And whereas the HOME program provides the funding to local communities to create decent, safe, and affordable housing opportunities for low-income persons. Nationally, over 1 million units of affordable housing have been completed using HOME funds. And whereas the following activities have been funded: owner-occupied housing, rehabilitation assistance, homeownership assistance to the first-time home buyer, public service, including the promotion of fair housing, in addition to economic development by providing loans to small businesses and micro enterprises. Now, therefore be it resolved that the City of Anderson designates the week of April the 11th through April the 15th of 2022 as National Community Development Week in support of these two valuable programs that have made tremendous contributions to the viability of the housing stock, infrastructure, public services, and economic vitality of our community. Be it further resolved that our community urges Congress and the administration to recognize the outstanding work being done locally and nationally by CDBG and HOME by supporting increased funding for both of these programs for the fiscal year 2022. And I'll sign both of these on the 11th day of April of 2022. While I do that, Ms. Cunningham, will you give her words?
Mr. Mayor and City Council, and I know a City Council member and City Manager and others, and the community, good evening, I'm Michael Cunningham, and I serve as the chairperson of the Community Housing Resource Board. So the first thing I'd like to do is start with a thank you to the City of Anderson. I'm not sure how it's handled across other communities, but the City of Anderson has been a steadfast supporter of the Community Housing Resource Board in tangible ways, namely by providing a staff person and staffing our fair housing hotline, and that is significant. In addition to that, the city has done such a tremendous job in supporting both fair housing and community development block grant, and you can see the effects of that in everything from parks and infrastructure and some of the housing projects that have come along. And I applaud you for all of your great work, and thank you for your great work and attention to this very worthwhile cause. And I would encourage you to please don't grow weary in your well-doing. The need is still there, and there are still things out there that we can do as a community to help improve and increase the stock of affordable and fair housing for this community. And you know, you've done a great job. I think of the things that you've done around mortgage assistance through the pandemic and other assistance that you've offered this community, and what a significant impact that has made. I work in healthcare at AMED Health, and you would think that we don't see the impacts of that, but we do. Every day there are people who we are going to see and care and then hopefully discharge, but the question mark is, are we able to discharge them to a safe place to live? And those are things that we see and we're aware of, and we also recognize the great work the city is doing to help us in this effort. So I come today to recognize both CDBG and fair housing, but also to thank you for your commitment to this over the long term. And I would also welcome each of you on Friday between 10 and 12, this Friday, which will be the 15th tax day, I believe. You are welcome to a CDBG celebration that will be held in the municipal complex. So it's a drop-in. Please come by and get some information. But also on Thursday, April the 21st at 5:30, we'll be having a fair housing workshop that's open to the community. So that is also available also at the municipal building here in the city at 5:30. So again, thank you for your commitment. Thank you for all that you're doing for these two incredibly worthwhile causes. And I look forward to, as a member of the Community Housing Resource Board, continuing to work with you in the future. So, thank you.
The minutes of our March 28th meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Make the motion to approve the minutes as presented.
We have a first by Mr. Newton,
Second.
second by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of March 28th pass unanimously. We have one item of old business, and that item is request consideration of an ordinance to annex and zone to RM 18 multifamily residential 4.96 acres located on Salem Church Road. Mr. McEwen.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a potential multifamily project development. You guys referred it to the Planning Commission. They met on April the 5th and recommended it for approval, and so it comes back to you for first reading. Mr. Maurice McKenzie, our Plan Development Director, will go over further details.
Okay, thank you. As the Mayor mentioned, this request is to annex and zone to RM 18 approximately 4.96 acres located on Salem Church Road. And the RM18 zoning classification allows up to 18 units per acre of multifamily units. And again, the proposal is to build multifamily units on this piece of property. You may recall just 2 years ago, you annexed a lot of property in this general area. A lot of it was already developed. There were 3 apartment complexes, there was a single-family residential subdivision, and a few commercial properties scattered in that area. But mentioning those existing multifamily apartment complexes that you annexed, you zoned those RM18 multifamily residential. So that zoning is a consistent zoning classification in this area. But again, this property is contiguous to those properties, and this did go before the Planning Commission, as Mr. McEwen mentioned last week on April 5th. They did unanimously recommend approval of this, again, because they see that the predominant land use in this area is multifamily in nature. Once this is annexed, the applicant will have to submit site plans, building plans, and also adhere to all of the city regulations, which includes the new tree ordinance, which will help enhance the natural features of the site. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Harvey?
So, Mr. McKenzie, on Salem Church Road, the map that we have, the little white parcel, what is currently right there?
The little rectangular piece cut out, it's a piece of property owned by a nonprofit agency.
So it's on the same side of the road, this property wouldn't circle it?
Correct.
And that property, we're currently looking at, it's just all wooded at this time and backs up to the Pepsi bottling company.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Roberts, Jeff Roberts?
Mr. McKenzie, were there any public comments for or against?
No, sir. The property was posted and we received no phone calls. No one attended the Planning Commission meeting either.
Mayor, I move that we move forward with annexation and rezoning.
First by Mr. Jeff Roberts.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rick Lockridge. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously on the first reading. Moving into new business, our first item of new business is to request consideration of appointment to the Anderson Area Transportation Study Policy Committee. Mr. McEwen?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have an opening, a vacancy of City Council, so there's 3 seats that we hold on ANAS. ANAS is the Anderson Area Transportation Study Policy Committee. It derives its funding from the Federal Transportation Bill, and as part of that, it really provides the guide at the local level in our metro area, including the cities of Anderson and Belton and portions of Anderson County, involving the study of transportation and funding transportation projects. One most notable one was the East-West Parkway, which was an ANAS project. The trails that you see being built right now, from extending from the Parkway into across Clemson Boulevard along Beltline is part of the project, and several of the roundabouts. But we do have a vacancy there. Mr. Maurice McKenzie, our transportation planner, falls under his division, and he'll go over the further details and the other members of the board.
Thanks. Mr. McEwen pretty much covered everything regarding the ANAS Policy Committee and the vacancy that exists. Per the bylaws of the Anderson Area Transportation Study, it's broken down with several positions that must be filled. And again, the Anderson City Council has 3 representatives on the ANAS Policy Committee, the mayor and 2 city council members, and that would be Mayor Roberts, Terrence Roberts, and John Roberts that are currently on the ANAS Policy Committee, so we have that 1 vacancy. Anderson County Council has 2 representatives from Districts 1 and Districts 2. You also have a representative from the Belton City Council, because ANAS does encompass the Belton area as well. The legislative delegation has representation. You have the resident senator, and you have 2 House members that represent the citizens of the city of Anderson. The District Commissioner of the SC Department of Transportation is represented on this board. The Anderson County Planning Commission also has representation, 1 member. And then there are 4 at-large members that are on the policy committee, and those are appointed by the policy committee itself. So that's the makeup of the board. And again, as the city manager mentioned, we're here tonight because we have a vacancy from the city council standpoint for the policy committee that was vacated by former Councilman Don Chapman. So we're asking you tonight to appoint a city council member to join John Roberts and the mayor on the policy committee.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. When Mr. Chapman resigned his seat, that vacancy came, and Mr. Chapman was on that committee and contributed greatly to some of the things that Mr. McKiernan has talked about the projects. It's a very important committee. It's a very important committee for the city of Anderson. When Mr. Chapman resigned, Mr. Jeff Roberts approached me about serving on that committee. Jeff has been very involved in transportation since he's been on council. He represents the city on Anderson, on the Appalachian Council of Government, and he is a member of the Transportation Committee. And I think he would be a great council member to represent ANATS. So that would be my recommendation, and I'll open it up for discussion.
Mayor, without hesitation, the utmost confidence that I'll nominate Mr. Jeff Roberts to fill that spot on ANATS. They've had great representation, like you said, with Councilman Chapman for many years. I know Councilman Roberts will do a great job representing the city, along with other Councilman Roberts and Mayor Roberts. So why not make the 3 Roberts, on there? So, it just fits. So with that, I'll make that nomination.
First by Ms. Newton.
Yeah, with Robert's Rules of Order, I agree, so I'll second that nomination.
Second by Mr. John
I know he'll do a
Roberts.
fine job.
Any further discussion?
Mayor.
Mr. Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your confidence. I will serve gladly. I did express interest, and I do have a passion for making some improvements to our transportation needs in our city, and really this is even beyond city limits. But thank you for your confidence, and I will gladly serve and recuse myself from the vote.
Mr. Stewart.
Mr. McKenzie, who are the 4 at-large members that are elected from the policy committee? And then how often do those at-large members come up for re-election?
There are no term limits for those members. Currently, there's 4 at-large positions. 2 of those are currently filled. We have 2 vacancies, and we're working to fill those positions. The at-large members include Lloyd Wilson and Ray Fretwell.
So the at-large is filled by the ANATS committee or by you?
The ANATS Policy Committee appoints those positions.
So we have recommendations, we can bring those to you?
That's, if you have somebody in mind, please send it our way, and we'll forward that to the Policy Committee. We do ask that they live in the ANATS area.
Which is the city, the county, right?
Well, it's the urban area outside the city. It does not encompass the entire county. I can show you a map, and we can talk about specifics, but it's larger than the city limits.
Right.
It goes into Belton as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
That's a good question. There, Greenville, there's GPATs, and Spartanburg has SPATs. And so those 2 policymaking organizations cover the urban area of the upstate South Carolina. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Our next item of new business is request consideration to purchase a tractor with attachments for the wastewater department. Mr. McEwen?
Yes, sir. From time to time, it's necessary to replace our equipment or add to our fleet of equipment, particularly in utilities. More frequently, a lot of requests come before you for equipment needs and so forth. Mr. Scott Banks, our utilities director, is here tonight to present the bid for you on a particular item. Mr. Banks.
Good evening, Council. sewer right-of-way crew currently uses regular farm tractor style tractors with metal enclosures and rear mowers. These do well in open areas, but unfortunately, a lot of times the crew runs into areas that a large tractor can't pass, or the debris is too heavy for that style of cutter. And with that in mind, we're recommending the purchase of a Taducci high-flow skid steer tractor with the bucket, the cutter attachment, and a brush mulcher attachment, excuse me, in the amount of $91,742. Our crew our staff is familiar with this and feels that it would meet our needs and give us good service.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Any comments, questions?
Just a question, Mayor.
Mr. Roberts?
By just curiosity, is this tractor in stock? Or is
The expected delivery is around July, I think.
Okay.
And it's kind of what we're seeing on all our orders.
And, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Farber?
So tell me more about, since Mr. Chapman isn't up here, about the Takeuchi tractor.
It's one of the Bennett Equipment, one of our local vendors, Taducci, and I think that's the way you pronounce it, I'm not sure, but it's very similar to Bobcat or Skid Steer. The brand name Skid Steer.
And tell me about the attachment. It has a tooth bucket and a brush cutter attachment and mulcher. Is that the mulching machine you say being implemented over about the last 10 years that are being used extensively?
Yes,
For
sir.
instance, on the corner of the Connector and Concord Road.
It would be very similar to that, and especially like as in the areas where we haven't been able to get those regular tractor mowers in. It can go in and hit those and clean it and keep the right of ways in better shape to where we can access them for maintenance
And will it take, it'll cut down a pretty good sized tree?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure of the exact diameter, but saplings and other types.
I'll add to, often, of course, utilities sets us its own enterprise fund, and we keep that equipment within the fund. But, we often, the general fund, the general government of the city often borrows from Public Works, and we swap equipment between utilities and Public Works. So this will be a good asset as well for Public Works and some of the different areas that we run into for clearing out.
Any further questions?
I got a question.
Ms. Lockridge?
Honestly, I haven't heard of Takeuchi. Have we used that type of equipment before?
I don't know that the city has, but my sewer collection manager, Art Garrison, he's used it in his private businesses, and we bought other pieces of equipment from Bennett Equipment and have always had good service and good provisions from them on anything we bought from them.
Any further questions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this, Mayor.
Second.
I have a first by Mr. Harvin, second by the Mayor Pro Tem. Further discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Banks. Our third item of new business is request consideration of agreement to purchase property on South 8th Street. Mr. McEwen.
Mr. Mayor, this is a piece of property that's for sale at South 8th Street, right beside the old Mechanics School. And behind it is a Mechanics Stadium property, which the city has a 50-year lease on, and we actively use that for football games and also for some other recreational games and practice there. But it stays very busy, particularly during football season. One of the things that we just run into as an issue is that the parking for the stadium is across the street so you have to cross Fence Street back over to a parking lot that's adjacent to First Baptist Church. And during the evening, particularly after the game, it's nighttime. You have kids crossing, parents crossing at different locations of it. It's just not a great situation. And we identified this property as a real benefit to this area, to this park, to the stadium. It connects linear all the way through to our park and down to the east side in DB Walker Park. And so we believe this will be a great addition to the city's land, and also it would give us the opportunity to go in there. And there's a lot of bamboo, you probably noticed on the back side. I walked the property the other day. We could clear that out. There's also been somewhat of a safety issue with that, and trash is sometimes within the bamboo, and we can beautify that area, and you'll be able to see the stadium also from Fant Street. But we previously had a conversation about this, and one of the comments mentioned by a council member was that we do core sampling, as we often do when we buy property or do projects on property that we own. And so that's currently scheduled. And so with this, attached to this is a contract to purchase for $150,000 that was prepared by Mr. McLean, our city attorney. And with it, it has a feasibility period in it for 30 days. And allows us to do core sampling, which is scheduled, and like I said, we'll get the results, and I can email those out to you. But this is going ahead and allowing us to get the project under contract, and allowing us to also be able to access the property to do the core sampling by being under contract and being into the feasibility period. It goes on the market value of it that the county has is $159,000, and like Mr. McLean previously mentioned to you, that's usually 75 to 80% of the actual value of the property. I think originally they were asking 165. We made a lower offer, and we have come back to 150. We're recommending council's approval to purchase the property.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Mr. Harvey?
What was there in the past?
That's debatable. Mr. McClay?
We think, I'm pretty sure it's Kay's grocery store.
There was a Kay's grocery store that fronted. I talked with several residents that worked at Kay's, and also there was a plastic bottling company that was right behind Kay's grocery store that ran all the way back to where the Canes are at, and they made plastic bottles and containers. And Herbert Irvin, who sits on our planning commission, his sister worked for that bottling company there, and Herbert actually worked for Kay's Grocery when he was younger, so he was familiar with what was there. But it was a brick building that continued with Kay's Grocery fronting Fant Street, and the bottling company was right behind it on the back side of it. That's what I was told.
And it wraps all, does it go all the way down to the stadium, or does it keep going?
It does. It goes all the way down to the there's a little...
The restroom facility.
Yeah, restroom facility right there. Then it's some pavement, some asphalt right there as part of the drive into it. So it goes all the way to that, so we'll touch it. And then, and that's also, it was identified in the recreation master plan, this piece of property, and actually building the parking lot there is a safety issue, then also clearing that out, and you'll be able to see the stadium and do some other further improvements.
Councilman Harvin, if you know, right at the corner of Market and Salem Street, there's 2 fence gates right there, that where people usually stay and used to watch the old high school games there. It goes all the way back to those fence gates right there.
That's what radio used to
That's
look
where
into.
radio used to, yep.
Practice field. So we would immediately start using it mainly for, our need is football. Is there an entrance from that parking lot?
Not yet. I mean, we would have to improve it. It's you know, I walked it when it just had rained the previous day, and it was very, you know, wet and muddy. So I couldn't imagine unless it was a dry spell you could just park on it. If it is rain, you definitely have an issue right now. So we would do a future improvement. Immediately we would go in there and clear out. Maybe with this new, well, I guess this ain't not coming until July, but would immediately go in there and clear out that bamboo and really clean out that. There's another tree that can be removed as well, and just make the accessibility and the look to the stadium. But then we would put forth a parking lot improvement on that piece of property.
Ms. Lockridge, then Mr. Roberts.
This really is a safety issue, because if you have the situation where you have parking across Fant, I used to work at Old McCants, and I can tell you that's a very dangerous street. People ride way beyond the speed limit there. So I would like to see that we agree to purchase this 1.66 acres on South Fence Street.
Is that a motion?
That is.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll just echo Mr. Lothridge's comments. I think it's something we owe our community. We promote our sports. We're going to continue to promote the recreation.
Yeah.
We do need to provide a safe passageway, and I personally shared an incident that I almost hit kid crossing the street there one night myself when we were pulling out. So with that, I'll second Mr. Lothridge's motion.
A first and a second, any other discussion?
And I would just encourage, if we could, put it on the fast path before this fall, when football starts, to lighting, even if it's just clear it out and light it up.
I agree.
That, maybe gravel or something so somebody could park.
Yeah, it should,
Maybe have a long-term plan.
right, it shouldn't be a problem for us to, get in there, clean out the bamboo, get lighting up, fairly quickly, and then, maybe put some gravel down for right now, until we can, further design it.
Good. Have a first and a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Our last item of new business, request consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 82 of the City Code, and that agenda item is our executive session, which is Section 30-4-7A2, discussions of negotiations incident to propose purchase of real property. That was for item 3, and receipt of legal advice relating to potential claims or matters covered by the attorney-client privilege. So with that, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. Well, first by Dr. Thompson. Second by Mr. Hargan. Question?
Just so I understand, the real property, that's what we just voted on?
Right, so it was a combined item that's just under that section that allows you to go into executive session in reference to that state law. But the real property was an option there if you wanted to go into executive session for it, but the mayor did not see the need in doing that.
Yeah, I was thinking if we need to go into executive session on
Okay, I just want to just clarify.
the South Fence Street, I'm sorry. I didn't.
But in addition, it is part to receive legal advice relating to request number 4.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand in executive session.
You have to do it again.
Mr. Martinez do a motion.
Yeah, he's got to do it.
You got to adjourn.
Yeah, you got to do it. You're going to adjourn tonight.
I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
So moved.
Have a first by Mr. Martinez, second by Dr. Thompson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're out of executive session. In executive session, we went over item B4, which is request and consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 82 of the City Code. Mr. McEwen?
Mr. Mayor, Andrew Strickland, our Assistant City Manager, put this ordinance together for consideration in front of you that we asked for legal advice in executive session to Mr. Frankie McLean, our City Attorney. Mr. Strickland will provide the background of the ordinance for consideration for first reading.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. The proposed ordinance you have before you would establish citywide standards for non-consensual booting and towing, as well as pay for parking lots, that sort of thing. So the rights of the parking lot owners are balanced here with the rights of businesses and people visiting downtown to be able to park freely throughout downtown. We've run into a few issues citywide with tow operators, private property owners. This ordinance would apply to commercial private property only, not residential private property. You always have the ability as a residential property owner to tow vehicles on your property. But if this is a commercial entity, you would be required to follow the rules that are outlined in this ordinance. Namely being the proper signage has to be placed at the entrance of the lot or the designated parking spaces where towing will be enforced. And you also have to list the name and phone number of the towing service provider. The tow provider must be permitted by the city to perform tow services, and that's in addition to the city business license. The tow provider must be able to accept credit card payments at the scene of the tow and at the office location. The tow provider has to be able to accept payment tendered at the scene if the vehicle driver arrives prior to the removal, and that payment has to be no more than half the maximum fee. Additionally, the tow provider has to call the police department within 30 minutes to report the tow. That's to better handle city services. You know, if somebody calls thinking their vehicle is stolen, you know, city services, city police department has to come out and make a report. This would prevent that. The city is also going to standardize what that sign looks like. We'll have that ready for you before second reading.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I guess the city would have books that would document the call that comes in saying XYZ called me, because it could be, well, I said, I called, they didn't answer, they, you know, it could be going back and forth. So I guess we've got some type of documentation on our side that when they call in that we'll have that.
Yeah, you're saying, so your question is regarding the towing company call within 30 minutes? Yeah, so it'll be reported in CAD and also recorded at E911 Center.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this ordinance on first reading and give our assistant city manager some time to come back with some suggestions that we've had to tighten up some language in the ordinance between now and second reading.
First by Mr. Stewart.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lockridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously on the first reading. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
First by Mr. Martinez. Second by Mr. John Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Kyle is a new dog. He doesn't know the rules.